Imagine this, a road trip with your childhood friends headed to one of the most beautiful, remote corners of India. It's supposed to be one last big adventure, before life gets in the way and pulls everyone in different directions. But what they found in the orange groves of the eastern Himalayas, well, it wasn't an adventure. It was a terrifying presence that would literally follow them home. So today, we're going to break down the story of that trip, pieced together from the account of one of the friends who actually made it out.
So let's just jump right into the heart of the terror. Picture it. You're in a pitch-black forest. Your heart is pounding because you just heard a horrifying scream. You and your friends just run for your lives. You burst out onto this dirt road, gasping for air, only to look around and realize someone's missing. One of you didn't make it out. This is the exact moment a dream trip just completely collapsed into an absolute nightmare. So how did they even end up here, terrified and separated in the middle of nowhere? To really, truly understand what went down, we need to go all the way back to the beginning, back to a simple plan made between four lifelong friends.
All right, so this is our crew. Four buddies from Dibrugarh, Assam, who are basically brothers. You've got Kamal and Nibir. They were the older ones, the more experienced drivers. Then there's Shardul, who's the one telling the story. And finally, Lohit, the youngest of the group. This whole trip was meant to be one last epic adventure together before Shardul had to move away for a new job.
Their destination was Dong Valley, this remote and absolutely stunningly beautiful place. It's actually known as the land of the first sunrise in India. So they just took off from their home at 3 a.m., driving 350 kilometers with no real plan, just full of that spirit of adventure. They are taking pictures, just enjoying the journey, completely, totally unaware of what was waiting for them up ahead.
The group rolled in pretty late in the evening, and as the sun went down and darkness started to creep in, the whole mood, it just started to shift. Their search for a place to stay is what led them to their first, truly unsettling encounter.
So they got to this place called Tillam, but every single campsite was full. As they were pretty much pleading with one of the owners, this local guy approaches them. He was unnervingly silent, just kind of staring, but he offered to guide them to some secluded rooms down this pitch-black road. Desperate for a place to crash, they said yes and let him hop in their car. Looking back now, his quiet intensity was the first massive red flag.
As they were driving, Shardul tried to make some small talk, asking about the beautiful orange groves all around them. The man's response was immediate and kind of weird. He warned them, don't wander around after dinner. He blamed it on some unfriendly local tribes, but his tone, it suggested something else entirely. It didn't feel like friendly advice. It felt like a command.
And this is where the mood just completely soured. Kamal, trying to lighten things up, he makes a joke about sneaking out later to pick some oranges. The local man's reaction was not a joke. He just snapped, his voice filled with this genuine cold anger, and said, if you want to die, only then should you think of something like that. The car just felt completely silent. The warning could not have been clearer. So this brings up the obvious question, right? Was this guy just being overly cautious, trying to scare off some city tourists? Or did he know exactly what was hiding out there in those dark orange groves? That was the question just hanging in the air as the friends finally settled into their room for the night.
Despite the man's stark warnings and a similar caution from the room's owner, a mix of alcohol and maybe a little too much bravado led the friends to make a decision that would change their lives forever.
So around 2 a.m., led by a drunken, defiant Kamal, they ignored every single warning and stepped into a nearby orange grove. Almost immediately, they noticed this horrible, putrid smell. They just figured it was a dead animal. But then, a girl's voice screamed, "Help me," out of the darkness. And that's when pure terror set in. They didn't think, they didn't hesitate, they just ran. And that brings us right back to where we started. That frantic, heart-pounding moment on the road where three friends realized their fourth was gone.
Forcing themselves to go back into that darkness, they searched for 10 agonizing minutes before they found him. But the person they found, it wasn't the Lohit they knew. He was just standing there, completely still, staring up into the branches of a tree and chanting in a language none of them had ever heard before. He was in a total trance, like he was communicating with something that only he could see.
They managed to drag a dazed and confused Lohit back to the room. They probably thought the danger was over, but they were so wrong. You see, they hadn't escaped the grove at all. They had brought something back with them.
The change in Lohit was just immediate and absolutely terrifying. The healthy, adventurous friend they knew was just gone.
His body was ice cold to the touch, yet he was shivering with a really high fever. His eyes would roll back in his head as he snapped in and out of these trances, speaking that same bizarre language. At one point, he even started vomiting blood. Whatever happened in that grove had physically, completely taken him over. In the middle of the night, Lohit suddenly sat bolt upright in his bed. He turned, looked directly at Kamal, the one who had insisted they go into the grove, and with a voice that was absolutely not his own, he delivered this terrifying message. "One of you must die. I won't leave him like this." It was crystal clear to all of them. This was no longer their friend speaking.
The next night, things somehow got even worse. Shardul and Kamal went outside to smoke, and about 100 meters away they saw her, a girl standing as still as a statue. She started to walk slowly towards them, her face hidden in the shadows, and she repeated the exact same horrifying threat. "One of you has to die." They shouted, the owner of the room came running out, and in the blink of an eye, she was just gone. So, of course, they were terrified. The friends cut their trip short the very next morning and just headed home, hoping against hope to leave that nightmare behind them in Dong Valley. But the presence that latched onto Lohit, it wasn't bound by geography. Back home, Lohit was just a shell of himself. He was pale, sick, and completely withdrawn from everyone. His family, desperate, took him to a witch doctor who gave him a protective amulet. And, miraculously, it seemed to work. Lohit started to get back to normal. But about 10 days later, at a farewell party for Shardul, his friends, maybe fueled by a few drinks, started teasing him about the amulet. And under that pressure, he made a fatal mistake. He took it off. The second that amulet came off, the change was instantaneous. His friend said Lohit just looked up and started speaking rapidly in that strange language again. He told them he was just stepping out for a smoke, and he never came back. They found his body near a canal later that night. Now, the official report cited some kind of illness, but his friends, they knew the truth. The protection was gone, and the entity had finally claimed its victim.
So what was this entity? What was the source of this horrifying haunting? Well, after Lohit's death, the surviving friends started digging. They spoke to people who were familiar with the area, and what they uncovered was a dark local legend.
The story goes that a local girl fell in love with a boy from a rival tribe. Of course, their families forbade them from being together, so they tried to run away. But her family caught them, and in their rage they killed her in those very same orange groves. It's believed her spirit, vengeful and tragic, never left, and now forever haunts the place where her life was so brutally cut short.
So, where does that leave us? Is this just a powerful local legend that tragically lined up with the psychological trauma of a terrifying night? Was Lohit's death a horrible coincidence, or was it the final act of a vengeful spirit? Or maybe the legend itself is just a way for a community to explain the unexplainable dangers that lurk in such a remote place. The final answer, it seems, remains a dark secret, held by the orange groves of Dong Valley.
If you like this video, please subscribe the channel. Thank you.